the Cushy TV, the Straight Talking YouTube channel. What I have for you today is a modern classic boxing tale. Do we remember that famous fight in 1998? I believe it was between Evander Holyfield and Iron Mike Tyson, when suddenly in frustration Tyson had bitten a lump out of his ear. With the boxing world had never seen anything like it. It only happened in America, so they thought. We had it a decade before, right here in London, England. Yes, who was it between? It was between Johnny Nelson, the brilliant Johnny Nelson, the longest reigning cruiserweight champion of the world, 7 years, 13 defences. And who was the opponent? It was Gypsy George Carman. Gypsy George Carman's not quite an household name like Johnny. Around the boxing scene, he's very well known. Yes, it was a fight. 20 years old Nelson, 22 years old respectively Carman. It was a crossroads fight. There were young men trying to get to the top. Who beat who? Well, I'll let you know in a minute. Allow me to bring in the fighters. Let's take a look at Johnny Nelson. Johnny's a man I massively admire. 13 amateur fights, only won 3. Yeah, went into Brendan Ingle's boxing gym, the Winkelbank gym, and actually says to Brendan, I want to become a professional. Most guys would have said, there's the door, what have you done, son? I've had 13 amateur fights, Governor, and I've lost nearly all of them except 3. Oh, up the road, you take the highway, mate. But not Brendan. He respected the man. He's a great trainer. He respected everybody. Johnny Nelson pursued his boxing career. And that didn't start as a bed of roses. He lost his first 3 fights. Yeah, and he pursued. He went into the heavyweight division and back down to the cruiser, and he lost fights, and he was unsure, but he was determined, and he had a big bite at the apple once and spat it out and didn't quite take the full fruits, but he kept on anyway. Eventually found his real weight, Johnny Nelson, the cruiserweight, and he went on that. Once he tasted it and learned how to do it properly, a man I massively admire, was given nothing in the fight game. He earned every single bit of it, right? And 7 years unbeaten and 13 title defences. So his opponent, let's bring in Gypsy George Carman. Well, a lot of you might know a little bit of Gypsy George Carman recently. Has challenged Big Joe Egan to a fight.
Sent your friend, Gypsy George Carman, to fight on your behalf. What sort of a man are you, John?
And how convinced you're going to win? I know you told me you've got a couple of secret weapons you are not willing to reveal, because it would be part of your tactics. How convinced are you that you will beat Joe Egan, and what is on paper a 50-50 fight if it happened?
I am fresh. I'm a fresh fighter. I'm maybe a 59-year-old, and I've got speed.
Right, well, there's the message. Big Joe, he challenged Fury. He said he had one last hurrah, and when he mentioned that to Fury, George has jumped on the back. He thinks, I've got one last hurrah, let's go and have a fight. But let's remove that aside. Let's focus on George's main career. A bit better in the amateur ranks than, quite a bit better in the amateur ranks than Johnny Nelson. Not a hugely massive hut there, amateur record, but he reached national finals and he was decent. And he was good, and he led with the backhand, George, and he turned pro just at the age, I think, 19, maybe just touching 20, and he, like Johnny Nelson, went into the heavy division and cruiser and was a bit unsure. Anyway, he found his way, mostly as a cruiserweight, George. He was rated quite up there. I found a clip in there, he was number 5 in the cruiserweight division. He had challenged for Commonwealth title, WBC International Commonwealth title against Chris Oker. He had 3 Southern Area professional title fights with TJ, Everton Blake and Louis Gent, and many believe that he did beat Louis Gent. It was a very close fight, obviously, but Led Gent got the nod, but I've even got a paper clipping somewhere to think that Carman had beaten Louis Gent for the Southern Area title. So, good fighter, yeah, and that's, you know, George settled in Sheffield was Johnny Nelson. George had a nomadic way of life, you know, alias Gypsy George Carman, based himself, born in Wisbech, Norfolk man, but spent a lot of time in London, but lived a nomadic life, taking lots of fights at short notice. Not the most spiteful as a puncher, but a very strong, tough man. So let's talk about the actual scene, or shall we say, the fight scene, shall we let somebody else talk about the scene? So what happened, I was in Liverpool watching the golf, Birkdale, Southport, yeah, and I actually met Tony Bellew in the afternoon and congratulated him. It was just after he had beaten David A in fight 1. I said, not only a great win, great tactics, well done. So we had a quick natter and that, and the way we went. And later on, I met up with Johnny Nelson in the bar and Adam Smith. And so I said to Johnny, quite just humorously, how are you going? He's a really nice bloke, easy to talk, easy to meet. So we got in conversation. I said, what are you doing beating my old sparring partner? That's not fair and right. He said, who's your old sparring partner? I said, Gypsy George Carman. So he then proceeds, he says, oh, don't talk to me about Gypsy George Carman, don't go there. But with a laugh, yeah. I said, well, come on, tell us this story. What happened? He said, well, Brendan Ingle, his trainer, the brilliant late Brendan Ingle, bless him. He said, we got a fight in London tomorrow at the Grosvenor Hotel. He said, then we're fighting English Gypsy lad, George Carman. Yeah, fine. He said, okay. So the stage was set, 6 3-minute rounds, and he comes back and he says, yeah, how's it going? How am I doing, Brendan? It's almost like we're waiting for one of those boxing jokes. And he says, how are we doing? He said, yeah, we're doing grand. He said, Johnny, it's all good, Johnny, we're doing grand. He said, and why am I pissing the blood? He said, look, I'm streaming out. I said, oh, and that's another matter. He said, Gypsy George Carman is hungry for the win. He's just spitting a lump out of your neck. So he'd taken a lump out of his neck. So me and Johnny finished his wonderful evening and Adam Smith. We had a really pleasant couple of 3 hours together, really nice. And so the next day I then ring George Carman. I said, George, what are you doing? I said, I sort of reversed the role. I said, what are you doing biting my friend? I said, because Johnny's a mate of mine now, we've been out drinking. He says, way too tall, awkward and elusive. So I had to try and take him out of his rhythm. So the best thing I could think of at that moment was to bite a lump out of his neck. I said, then did it work? He said, it worked, it nearly worked. He said, I got back into the fight, I took him out of rhythm a bit, and I lost 59-58. And that was a story of the great brilliant Johnny Nelson and Gypsy George Carman. Yeah, so if you thought that was the first time it had happened in America, we'd done it a decade. We're the originals here in Britain, mate. The Americans always copy us. Yeah, so I really hope you enjoyed the story. Thanks for tuning in. Please press that click and subscribe button. Thank you very much. Until next time.